Hello, and welcome back to another Borg episode review, and the last one for the TNG crew. And out of all the TNG Borg episodes, it's the one that's liked the least. And in this review, I'll hopefully explain why the writers bit off more than they could chew with this episode, by having this episode be a sequel to the season 5 episode I, Borg, as well as the final episode to have Data's brother Lore in it. With the intro out of the way, let's dive right into this review. The episode opens with Data playing poker with some of history's important physicists of the 20th century. Albert Einstein, Sir Isaac Newton, played historically accurate, unlike the Doctor Who episode Wild Blue Yonder, and Stephen Hawking, playing himself. Hawkins wins the hand, and before a new hand can be dealt, a red alert is sounded, as they have received a distress call from an outpost on Onika 3. When the Enterprise finally arrives in that sector, they notice a ship, which they assume was also attacked. An away team assembled, and they beam down to the planet. While scanning, they detect that the phaser blasts from the Ferengi, but that seems odd as it's too brutal for them. Once Data opens a door, it's revealed to be a Borg drone, meaning that the Borg are somehow behind this. And that's when more drones appear and they get into a firefight. During this firefight, however, Riker notices some things different about these drones. He notices that one of them refers to himself as I, and he also clocks that a few of them have actual names. Commander Data is attacked by one of these drones, and he kills this drone by picking the drone up by the throat and throwing him against a wall. Whilst that is happening, however, Data notices that he's feeling something. That feeling being anger, his first proper human emotion. Back on board the Enterprise, the ship that they thought had been attacked actually is the one doing the attacking as it starts to open fire on the Enterprise. During this time, the drones get beamed back up to the ship and it heads into this weird vortex type of thing and just disappears. Back on the Enterprise, Data has requested to be temporarily relieved of duty because he doesn't think he's fit enough after experiencing his first emotion. Then the senior staff have a meeting, which afterwards Picard goes and contacts Starfleet, which sends a mini task force. We then cut to Data and Geordi talking as Data asks Geordi to explain how anger feels. When they reach the same conclusion that they both are incapable of explaining it, Data goes to seek counsel from Deanna Troi, and it's also here that he mentions that he felt something else along with the anger, that being pleasure. After 16 hours on patrol and one false alarm, they finally get a hit. The Enterprise discovers how the Borg managed to escape so quickly, and that is through a transwarp conduit. This is the first episode to have mentioned that, and then later, as we see, the transwarp conduit gets a visual upgrade during Voyager's era. In the holodeck, Data is trying to recreate that feeling that he felt down on the planet's surface, but he can't seem to. He's increased the levels a bunch and it still does nothing. So when Geordi walks in, he tries to ask Geordi to disengage the safeties to see if that is enough incentive to bring out this anger feeling for him. But before that happens, they get called to the bridge, as the Borg have been spotted at the MS colony. When the Enterprise arrives, the Borg are already trying to escape. The Enterprise follows them into the transwarp conduit, and once they re-emerge, their shields are dangerously low. So one blast from the Borg vessel knocks their shields down. So two drones beam over, and they're swiftly dealt with. One is dead, one is alive, so it's brought down to the brig for questioning. This does not go over well, and eventually it's just Data and this Borg called Crozius there, and Crozius is trying to coax Data for that feeling he felt. He presses something on his arm, and this triggers that feeling coming back for Data. Later on the bridge, we learn that a shuttle has been using Data's command codes and has entered into the transwarp conduit. So the Enterprise follows. After they exit the transwarp conduit, they scan for the shuttle and find it on a planet, so they make their way there. They assemble an away team of two different groups and beam down. As they walk around, the first away team, being of Captain Picard, Geordi, and Troy, stumble across a building and enter. And it's actually here that we get to see the Borg flag for the first time. But it's also here that it's revealed to be an ambush, and the person behind it all is lore. And Data walks out, showing that the Soong brothers have joined together. With that, episode 1 ends. Episode 2 picks right back up where we last left off, and it turns out that these drones are what's left of the cube that Hugh was on, and that because of Hugh's reassimilation, that these drones got a taste of individuality and they lost connection to the collective. Lore found them and is using them, essentially. And he has a plan to rid them of their organic components and make them full androids. Geordi is, of course, taken to be experimented on because it wouldn't be Geordi if he hasn't either been kidnapped or experimented on in TNG. The Borg ship shows up and attacks the Enterprise with its skeleton crew, and Crusher manages to beam as many as the away team back as she possibly can and heads back to the transwarp conduit as ordered. Except instead of actually going through the transwarp conduit, she sends a buoy to inform Starfleet of what's going on, as she then goes back and deals with the Borg ship, eventually destroying it. Back on the planet, Riker and Worf end up getting captured by some Borg, but instead of being brought to the building where the captain is, they're brought in front of Hugh. We cut back to Data and Lore as Data is starting to question things due to some jiggery pokery of Picard, Troy, and Geordi. Whilst this happens, an interesting thing occurs. Two drones walk up to Lore, and it is revealed that one of them is hiding his thoughts from this other drone, which we know it to be Crotius. And it's here basically that we learn that they have been linked together so that they can hear each other's thoughts, which is interesting because this is something that is brought up later on during the Star Trek Voyager era in the episode Survival Instinct, when Seven of Nine forcefully reassimilates three of her former Unimatrix. And that then, of course, causes the three of them to have a be constantly linked together. Eventually, Data goes to bring Picard out from the cell as he's trying to, I don't know, break him out or something like that. And it's here where we get an ambush. And just before Lore can kill Picard, that is when Hugh reemerges as well as Riker and Worf. A big kerfuffle happens. Lore slips away. Data follows, shoots Lore, and deactivates him. And episode ends. So here's my issues with this episode, and that is the fact that it's trying to tell two stories at once. And because of that, the story suffers overall because one of the stories gets the more spotlight than the other. So as I said at the beginning of this review, this episode was supposed to be a sequel to the episode I, Borg. However, that story gets left on the chopping block for the vast majority of this two-parter, as it focuses more on the relationship between Data and Lore, and how Lore is able to control Data by feeding him some emotions. I mean, hell, Hugh doesn't even get any much screen time. He gets less than 10 minutes at that, and that's me being generous. It could be probably about 5 minutes, give or take. Um, but here's how I would have done things differently if I was a writer for Star Trek Next Gen at this time. I would have had it split into two different episodes. Have the two-parter be about Data and Lore, Lore finding a way to coax Data away from the Enterprise, and have that be the whole story. Continue with the same beat for beat as things happen in this episode, just without the Borg. And then have the sequel episode to I, Borg be its own standalone episode, where there are two different factions that have splintered off with these XBs, and at some point, they could attack a colony, and during that kerfuffle, managed to kidnap Geordi, which Hugh then hears through the grapevines and then goes out to try to rescue him. And whilst that happening, Enterprise is trying to find them. They link up with Hugh, and then they save Geordi, and then episode ends. That if that had happened, for the have it be two different episodes instead of it being, one big amalgamation of a two-parter, I think fans would have enjoyed that bit better. I know I definitely would have. But let me know what you thought in the comments down below. I know for the past 3 Borg videos I've been using actual footage for these reviews, but I couldn't find much footage for what I would have wanted for the standard that I've set for these Borg reviews. But let me know what you thought of Descent Part 1 and 2 in the comments down below. And I shall see you all later on this week for my foray into the Voyager Borg episodes. However, I shall see you all on Monday for my review of Return of the Living Dead. I'll catch you all for that review on Monday. I'll see you all next time.